Hey there, and welcome to the step-by-step for neon spinning cubes. Just to show you really quickly what this is, if you follow my Instagram account, or I believe this is on Facebook as well, you'll probably would have seen this in the past. It's really, really simple. It's three 3D cubes that are in the element of form. And they're just spinning and they're looping. And then there's a texture going on in here. I don't know if you can see this or not. There's a speckly texture going on, a grit. And there's also some displacement mapping going on these edges. And of course, there's chromatic aberration, which I always love. So very simple effect to create, done with After Effects and Cinema 4D Lite. So let me show you how to create this simple version of form in After Effects. And just so you know, this has gotten a lot of great response from people that see it. It doesn't always have to be super complicated to make really interesting motion design. So this is a perfect example of simpler is better. So let's jump into After Effects. So here we are inside of After Effects, and I'm going to create a different size composition this time. This composition is going to actually be 1080 by 1080. Call it spinning cube. And it's 1080 by 1080 because that's an Instagram size for video. We're just going to create this actually for Instagram because that's what I created for originally. So this is a great example of how to do that. I'm going to leave it at 24 frames a second. You could do multiple different frame rates. But we're also going to make this 48 frames. So 2 seconds, 24 frames a second, 48 frames. That's 2 seconds. It's going to be a 2-second loop. So 1080 by 1080. Cool. Okay. So here we are. So the very first thing we're going to do, I don't know if you've ever worked, with After Effects and Cinema 4D, but it's actually very easy to do. What you're going to see here is it's actually going to open up a full version of Cinema 4D. But that's okay. If you have Lite, which I originally did this on, it works exactly the same. You're just not going to see as many options probably in your Lite version, but what we are doing can be done in Lite. So we're going to go to our timeline here. We're going to click on Layer, New, and we're going to go down to Maxon Cinema 4D file, and we'll click that. And you have to save the Cinema 4D file before it actually opens up Cinema 4D. So we will do that. We'll just call this spinning cubes, and I'll save it. And it's going to launch Cinema 4D, and we're inside of Cinema 4D. So like I said, yours may look slightly different. You may not have all these options up here or around, but that's totally fine. What I'm going to show you is all in Cinema 4D. So the first thing we're going to do is, because we're working in 24 frames a second, we need to make sure our project settings are 24 frames per second. If this window is not open, all you have to do is go up to Edit, Project Settings, and it'll open up down here. So we're going to change this to 24. And that's fine and dandy. And you can see here that the sides are slightly darker. And that's because this is what's going to render. This is the frame that's going to render. So we set up our After Effects project to be 1080 by 1080. So we'll jump back into Cinema. And we're going to go to this window, this little icon right here. It's a clapperboard with a settings icon. You just click that and it opens up render settings. And we're just going to change it from 800 to 1080 by, and you can see you'll see the window actually change its size as I do this. 1080. Cool. So here's 1080 by 1080. It's really weird. When you render out, you also have to change the frame rate here to 24 frames per second. So that's all you have to do. You could change this to all frames, but that's pretty much it. Everything else will stay the same for now. So we'll close that down, and we're going to create a cube. So you can do that by clicking here, or you could go to Create, and we'll go to Create Object Cube. And I'm not going to mess with any of these settings. I'm just going to keep it exactly how it is. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here to this little array icon, and we'll go to atom array. Click that. And then we're going to drag the cube into the atom array. So you just click on the cube, drag, and see how the little arrow turns from left to down. When it's down, that means it's going to put this cube underneath the atom array as a child. And so I'll let go, and you can see that it moved underneath here, and it also changed to this atom array, right? Which is these tubes and these spheres. So all we have to do now is just click again on atom array, object, and we're just going to change the cylinder radius to 1 and the sphere radius to 1. And there we go. There is our cube, right? Simple enough. Okay, all we have to do now is create a texture to tell this cube what color we want it to be. So I think for my original, I did red to start, but it really doesn't matter. So we just go to create new material, and there's our material. And we just click and we drag. You could drag it on top of the object here, or you could drag it over here to the atom array. But there it is. See, now it's white. So I can double click, and here it is opened up. I actually like to go back to my texture, double click, and it opens up a new window. Where I can see all of the different properties of the texture, which they don't show up over here. I'm not really sure why. Once I activate them, they'll actually show up here. So if I activate illumination, you can see it popped up right there. So that's what we want. We want luminance, I'm sorry. So we'll turn off color and we'll turn off reflectance. Okay. I guess in theory, you could leave color instead of luminance and just turn color all the way to white, because you can see the color defaults to like a gray. But it still kind of has, it has this shadow to it, right? In the preview. Well, luminance does not do that. Luminance is 100% white. So if I want to make this, actually, let's just go with something different here. Let's do pink. I've been really into pink and purple lately. It's probably because of my daughter. But yeah, there's our pink cube, right? So doesn't do anything. So one more quick setup. Let's jump back into After Effects. If I'll hit Command Tab on the Mac, and it brings up all my icons. I'll go to After Effects. Here we are back in After Effects, and remember we set this to a duration of 48 frames per second, and see how this is our 3D cube from Cinema 4D, and it's way longer than 48 frames per second. So we need to make the timeline match. So we'll take this to 48 frames. And you noticed in After Effects, there's nothing here, right? There's no cube. Why is there no cube? Because we haven't actually saved this version again. We saved it when we started, but there was no cube when we started. So we'll hit Command S to save, and we'll jump back into After Effects and watch what happens. Boom, there it is. Okay. It's obviously a low res version. It's a preview version, because if you go over here into After Effects, you're going to see render settings, right? So when you create a Cinema 4D object in After Effects, it automatically puts the Cinema 4D object in your timeline, and then it applies this effect called Cineware. And Cineware is what links the Cinema 4D object to After Effects. So if I change renderer from software to standard final, standard is the renderer, final is the final preview. There you go. So all these different functions can do a lot of different things. I'm not going to get into that, especially in this particular lesson, since we're just now jumping into Cinema. I know some of you have some Cinema 4D experience and some of you don't. So I'm keeping this very, very basic for right now. So let's jump back into Cinema and let's animate this. So how do we animate this? Well, it's pretty simple. It's just like keyframes in After Effects. What we're going to do is I'm going to actually rename this to large cube. And we'll go ahead and close that. And all I have to do is actually before we animate it, let's do this. Let's copy, which is Command C, Command V to paste, or you could do copy and paste right here. Pretty simple. We'll call this medium cube. And then we'll copy this and we'll paste again and we'll call this small, small cube. And I like to keep things in a nice tidy fashion. So it'll go from biggest to medium to small. Okay. So we're going to open up medium. We're going to click on that cube and under object here, you see the size is set to 200 by 200 by 200. They're all set to 200 by 200 by 200 because we copied and pasted. So I'm just going to reduce this middle one to half the size, which would be 100 by 100 by 100. So there we do, we have a cube inside of the other cube. And then I'll open up the small cube and I'll make this one, I think before I did 25 of across the board instead of 50. So we'll try 25, 25, 25. And all I'm doing is hitting tab on my keyboard to move from one property to the next, to the next, to the next. So for whatever reason, the 25 worked better than the 50 that I liked. So, okay. So, in my original, concept, what I thought about doing was actually transforming or rotating each of these cubes individually, to come up with something unique. What I ended up doing actually was I actually grouped these three together and I animated that by itself. So all I have to do that is just select all three. Hopefully I'm not going too fast for you guys here. And group object or Alt G. So when I group them, it creates a null, just like After Effects, really simple. So we'll just call this cubes, right? I actually want to move that over, but I can't for whatever reason, but that's okay. So all I have to do now is, I believe I animated on the pitch. So I just click, set a keyframe for pitch, and I go down my timeline. Several ways you can do this. I can click, I can drag, I can go to the end with this button here. All different ways. Just go to the end of your timeline and go to 180 degrees. And I click again. See how there's a yellow circle there because there's no keyframe. So if I click again, boom. So now if I play back, you can see it rotates. But you can already see a problem because see how it starts. Cinema 4D defaults to a Bezier on the curves, on the speed curves, F curves. Whereas, After Effects, I guess it does default to Bezier as well. In my preferences on After Effects, I actually changed it to linear. But that's a whole different story. So all I have to do is I can right click on cubes and I can go down to show F curves and it opens up this window. If that doesn't work for you, you can still highlight cubes. You can go over here to window and go to timeline F curve. And if you don't see all the keyframes, you just right click in this window and do frame all, or you can hit H, or you can go up here and let's see, where is that at? Frame all, and it does not show it. There it is. Let's do that again. I had to highlight the word cube. Didn't know what to frame. So frame all. So really simple. I can just click and drag to highlight both keyframes and go right here to linear. You can see that it defaults to a spleen. Let's click. Watch what happens when I click linear here. So see, now it's a constant loop. Pretty simple. One other thing I did is I actually changed the bank, I believe, to 45 degrees. So let's see what happens here. Yeah, so see, that actually made the animation more interesting, right? So instead of just being straight on, well, it's not even quite straight on there, but you can mess around with the angles and just give it something, well, they're straight on, which is not nearly as interesting as either this angle or even this angle. I think I like this a little bit better. But so that's essentially all you have to do inside of Cinema 4D. We could take it even further. We could individually now animate each of these cubes so that, you know, right now, if you look at their keyframes, they're not doing anything, right? The null for the group is spinning on the pitch. So I could theoretically set a keyframe for, oh, let's do the small cube. No, actually, let's do the medium cube, the one in the middle. And I could set a keyframe here. I could go to the end and set another keyframe again to 180 degrees. Hit a keyframe, right click, animation, show F curve. Make sure these are set to a linear. And let's just see what this looks like. So it's a little more interesting. It actually starts to get a little more almost kind of confusing to my eye. Something I might try here is I might try, what are we doing here? The medium. I might try and just go 90 degrees and see what that looks like instead. Oops. See, they were all highlighted there, so a keyframe was set for all of them. So let's change this to 90 degrees. And we're still at linear. Cool. Let's see what this looks like. I don't know. That might work. Let me try and set this bottom one now from 0 to 90. Right click, animation, show F curve. Highlight the two keyframes. Linear. Let's see what this looks like. It looks interesting. I don't know that I absolutely love it. Something I might try to do now really quickly is just go back to the original and do a -90. It's all about experimentation, right? Show F curve just to make sure. Sometimes I'm doing this because sometimes when you set a keyframe, it'll go back to a spleen again for whatever reason. Now, I don't know if you guys notice a difference. To me, this looks better at a -90. So the next thing I'd try is I would then go to the last small cube and try it at -90 as well. Set a keyframe. I don't like that. So I actually like it at a positive. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's still too much going on. Sometimes it can be a little too much going on. So let's just, let's actually take this keyframe out. Animation, delete track. So now it's just the little cube that has a little bit extra movement. And I like that. I'm cool with that. That looks pretty good. So last step here, I'm going to Command S to save, or go to File, Save, and it should have updated. In After Effects, I can actually preview this. Here's standard draft. This will move a little bit quicker. Sometimes you'll see a huge change in the quality. Other times you won't. This one doesn't make a huge difference. Okay, so there we go. So now it's moving inside of After Effects. It's form, it's 3D, it's looking cool, right? So now let's take it to the next level and I'll show you what I did. So we're going to add a couple of adjustment layers here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this up a bit. We're going to add, glow edges. Let's see what that looks like. That's pretty cool. So this is a little bit different than I did the first time. I used a straight up glow that time, but I like this. I also, to the 3D object, actually applied a gradient, which I believe I just did a gradient ramp. Yeah, so the default is actually pretty cool. Right there, I like the color of that. So very simple. From this to this, by just adding a ramp, you could, it's just that little subtle detail, you know, just giving it so it's not a solid same color all the way around. There's this little subtlety in the color that your eye will notice when you're watching it. Your eye's not going to automatically, most people who aren't artists won't pick that up immediately, but they'll just look at it and say, well, there's something about that my eye really likes. Well, it's just these subtleties, right, that I always talk about. So a simple gradient makes quite a bit of difference. And then I also added my favorite, which is noise. Over the top of this, I need to add a background so we can see the noise. So we'll try that. This is a dark. Sometimes I like to use pure black, sometimes I don't, and this is not pure black. So noise on top of the glow and noise beneath the glow, which I kind of like the noise beneath the glow. And this glow is a little bit too strong for me. Less is more, right? Less is more. So with, without. With, without. So the glow is giving its color. The gradient is creating this brighter white to dark. The glow is giving it that pink color, which I like. So, and then you could always finish this off with a little bit of chromatic aberration, which I love, which I think I did use before. Let's just look. I don't know if it's necessary on this version. Oh gosh, I just love it. It's always so cool. Just that retro vibe that's going on. So of course we have to use that, right? Yeah, and I did do a displacement map, which I'll show you how to do that really quickly. We're just going to import some footage in and bring it in here. In here, I can't remember off the top of my head if this was Creative Commons footage or if it's footage I actually paid for. So I'll have to check into that one before. If it's not here in the project file, there are so many places you can go. Go to YouTube. You can search VHS footage, and you can download a multitude of different footage to use in this kind of stuff. So, but what I did is I turned it off. I believe I locked it. I went back to my spinning cubes. I said, let's distort with a displacement map. And that's already kind of crazy. And we changed the displacement layer to the VHS layer. All right. And let's see here. Yeah. So see, it's very subtle. But it works for me, right? So subtlety is more, less is more, right? So there you go. There's the spinning cube from Cinema 4D to After Effects. It's a really cool loop that you can do a lot with. I love loops. I've been really getting into like GIFs and things like that lately. So this is how you do it. Very simple. Hope you learned something new. Leave a comment, let me know. And I look forward to seeing what you guys create in the Facebook group. See ya.